Military experts say President Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine has not gone according to plan. Ukrainian resistance is defying expectations and complicating the Kremlin's efforts to seize the country. A U.S. official says up to 6,000 Russian troops have been killed. Many believe Russia's invasion has exposed the shortcomings of one of the largest militaries in the world. For more, David Stone joins me now. He is a William E. Odom Professor of Russian Studies at the U.S. Naval War College. Professor, it's good to have you with us. Before we get into the specifics, tell us a little bit about the history between Russia and Ukraine and why there is this problem now.
So Ukraine and Russia have been tied together for centuries. Ukraine was part of the Russian Empire. It was part of the Soviet Union. And I think that heritage helps to explain the fundamental fact that, in my view, and again, speaking just for myself, not for the U.S. government, that Vladimir Putin has real trouble recognizing Ukraine as a sovereign state. Putin's approach to international politics seems to be that he wants his neighbors, particularly neighbors that have been part of the Soviet Union, to be subservient, to not determine their own destiny. And I think that's the fundamental fact that explains what he's trying to do in Ukraine.
Also, remind us, Professor Stone, about Russia's annexation of Crimea. Tell us how the international community responded to that and how that might have played into what we're seeing now.
So back in 2014, as a result of a political crisis inside Ukraine, Vladimir Putin seized initially Crimea and then shortly afterwards gave Russian military assistance to breakaway regions in the Donbass. And so the Western response to that was fundamentally economic. There were a number of sanctions imposed on Russia, nowhere near as heavy as those that we're seeing right now. Sanctions on individuals within the Russian government, but no military response. Military aid to Ukraine, but certainly not any Western military presence in Ukraine. And subsequently, of course, there's been a debate. Was enough done? Should more have been done? But again, the sanctions were there, and they certainly did damage to the Russian economy, but not so much that it dissuaded Vladimir Putin from trying again in 2022.
Professor Stone, let's talk about Russia's military capabilities. By accounts of how large the military is, it's the fifth largest in the world. In terms of its, on the global firepower index, it ranks second only to the United States. Tell us how its artillery, its tanks, its aircraft, and all of that stack up, and why the Ukrainian resistance is actually proving so powerful at this point.
Certainly on paper, Russia has a very large military. I think one of the things that we are learning from what we're seeing in Ukraine right now is that the proportion of that very large army that is combat effective is smaller than we realized. That to put this force together to invade Ukraine, Vladimir Putin has been stretching his resources of good soldiers and good equipment. And I think there's a fundamental problem of overconfidence that's going on here as well. But certainly we've seen that the Russians have not been able to operate with nearly the efficiency that they certainly would have expected. A lot of signs from early in the invasion suggested that Putin and his regime expected a very quick victory that simply has not materialized, in part due to stellar Ukrainian resistance, but also in part due to flaws in the Russian military modernization.
So tell us a little bit more about that. I want to know about those flaws. I also want to know about the flaws in the military strategy that Russia had going into this, beyond just overconfidence.
So in terms of flaws in the military, I think there's flaws in the military and then there's flaws in the plan that they were following.
Right.
One of the things that I think we're seeing in terms of flaws in the military as opposed to flaws in the plan are more difficulty than we expected carrying out complex operations, coordinating all the branches of land power, coordinating that with air power, and using it effectively. To do that is quite difficult. It's a complicated matter, and the Russians don't seem to have been executing that very well. We're also getting anecdotal reports from the Ukrainian side that suggest Russian equipment is not in the best shape, that it may be poorly maintained, that there may have been some cost cutting as a result of corruption. If money that's supposed to buy high quality equipment instead flows into private pockets, then obviously that military is not going to be as effective as it would otherwise be. So again, I think we've seen problems in execution and problems in equipment and problems in morale. it seems fairly clear that most of the Russian military didn't really think Vladimir Putin would go through with this invasion. And so they weren't prepared mentally and emotionally for what they were going to be doing. And so it seems to have come to us as a surprise to a lot of the troops on the ground that they would be fighting people who look and sound a lot like them. And that has proven to be a big problem. Now, again, I think there's an additional problem of overconfidence, but that's a separate issue, a separate discussion.
All very helpful. Professor David Stone, thank you.